speaking of boring, I'm running out of time already. Jesus Christ! Like there's so much to this stuff. Yeah, boring. Mm-hmm. We're gonna needle drop this too. I'm gonna take this from the top. But this is you guys know I had to dive into this. Look at the title: the severe economic consequences war with China may bring. This is after Rep. Chris Stewart said in a recent interview that he believed America might be 4 to 6 years away from war with China. A senior officer called him in and told him he was wrong. He said, Chris, I think you're wrong. I think it's closer to 2 years, no matter the timeline. Blah, blah, okay, whatever. About when they're going to attack Taiwan, yada, yada, yada. And Glenn is worried that that'll be the end of the dollar. Like, fuck Taiwan. This is the same argument from these folks. There's been an ongoing thing in China because you don't really have what we would consider car insurance. And if you injure someone, you have to basically pay for them the rest of their life. So a lot of people, there was like all these videos in the last 10 years of people just running over people and then backing up and running over them to kill them because a dead person is a flat fee, but a injured person, you have to pay for that injury forever. And so they'd rather deal with the dead person. And if you've got a car, you're doing well anyways. So you've probably got the ability to slip money to the right people and get off anyways. It's fucking horrifying. But it's this idea like, if it affects me past a certain point, fuck those people. It's the crassest, most disgusting version of that. And there's a lot of that in Glenn Beck in terms of, the conversation about, well, I mean, Auschwitz is a long way away. There were conversations like that being had in the circle of people that would believe what Glenn Beck believes back before World War II.
Stewart on with us. Hello, Chris. Always good to have you on.
Good morning, Glenn Beck.
You are, of course, a national award-winning author. You're really good. I tried to hire you as a writer, and then you're like, no, I think I should go to Congress. What a mistake that was. You're a world record Air Force pilot. You are a former owner and CEO of a small business. And
now you're a government employee. What happened?
Now you're in Congress, and I'm sorry for that. Chris,
yeah.
You are on all kinds.
Yes, I mean, the idea of public service, I mean, it turns my stomach, Glenn, but it's really the best way to buy up land in Utah.
Of committees, and I've got all kinds of questions. So let me start with the latest.
Are you my mother?
Did you read the Washington Post today?
Not yet this morning. What did I miss?
So they say that, well, they have one source, and it's a kid, but they did talk to his mom before they put him on record. A kid says that he knows who the leaker is.
Oh, right. And by the way, this is, I guess, from, I don't know when this was posted, but they've already busted the guy. They've named him already. Leaker named. This will be. Yeah, National Guardsman, 21 years old, Jack Teixeira, this guy. Authorities say Jack Teixeira, a 21-year-old member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard, posted sensitive materials in an online chat group. FBI arrested him in connection with the leak of dozens of highly classified documents containing an array of national security secrets, including the breadth of surveillance the United States is able to conduct on Russia. Airman First Class Jack Douglas Teixeira was taken into custody to face charges of leaking classified documents after federal authorities said he posted batches of sensitive intelligence to an online gaming chat group called Thug Shaker Central. That's them gathering him up. There he is in his red shorts. What's up, traitor? Great idea. And by the way, this don't get caught up in like, is he a Snowden 2.0 or is this a WikiLeaks moment? Nah. He didn't give a fuck. He just dumped it in a chat room because fuck everybody. The arrest raised questions about why such a junior enlisted airman had access to such an array of potentially damaging secrets, why adequate safeguards had not been put in place after earlier leaks, and why a young man would risk his freedom to share intelligence about the war in Ukraine with a group of friends he knew from a video game social media site. Besides the fact that he's a big dummy, because he's a dum-dum and he's a big dummy that's going to go to jail for a long fucking time.
He was a guy in this group of about a dozen kids, and he worked on a military base and would go in and just leak these documents to the kids. I find that a little strange, but I wanted to ask you because he worked on a military base, and he said he had access to documents and servers that he could get in and see all these secrets. How hard is that with the documents that you know and I know have come out? How hard what kind of classification would you have to have? And do we have those kinds of skiffs on military bases that would allow access to anything?
Yeah, well, a couple things, Glenn, if I could. Number one is you said, did I read the Washington Post this morning? I got to tell you, I don't read the Washington Post most mornings.
Yeah.
Because you're not a trust.
Shout out, but I care. I chose a job in Washington because I love staying home.
Right. Okay.
Not a trusted source of information. So,
they turned out to be right.
let's at least consider that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this,
So, by the way, that's Rep. Chris Stewart from Utah insulting Glenn Beck for being a sponge-headed follower.
the other thing, too, is that I think there's probably two elements of this that are worth commenting on. Number one is that most of the stuff that we've seen, in fact, all of it, is classified top secret, which is actually one of the lowest classifications. So it probably...
One of the lowest secret classifications. That's why they call it top secret. Is there a low? Maybe we should have a low secret. If this one gets out, it's 5 years in jail, not 35.
Thousands of people who probably had access to a lot of these documents.
Okay.
And the second thing, Glenn, is that the whole presumption of the classification, number one is we overclassify a lot of things, and that's another topic. But some of these things, if you read them, you think, well, that doesn't seem terribly classified. And
That's because you're a stupid person and you don't understand correlative knowledge. If we know this detail, we know this detail, and then we get this low res, what you think is not important, but a top secret document that might remove that one element of the equation from it. We can't finish the equation without this one element, but once we know it, suddenly we can see from that detail that's publicly available and that detail that's publicly available, this secret element adds, it fills in the entire picture and gives us context, and therefore we can act on the other information that we can get through other sources. Might seem minor, but, it's like that one missing screw from a piece of IKEA furniture.
seems actually fairly obvious. And I think that's the case with some of these documents, although not all of them.
So far, this asshole would go, I would have classified some of the papers that leaked out as less important than the ones that were really dangerous, but they were all in the same folder together. So maybe that's why they were all top secret. Fucking hell.
But my point is that the whole process only works if there's a presumption of trust. And of course, there's some people.
No. There's no presumption of trust, you dumb son of a bitch. The whole point is that that's what need to know is about. Why do you, nobody has a presumption of trust. Why the fuck do you think people have passwords for websites? Presumption of trust. Okay, when you're talking about like military people, that's why you have different categories of people who are allowed to see shit. And if this guy doesn't have the right to see it, or he got the right to see it through malfeasance or lying or pretending to be something, that's spying. And if you're like, well, you trust people. And so sometimes, you wake up in a hotel room with your pants on backwards and the Russian hooker you picked up, turns out she's leafing through your briefcase. But she seemed trustworthy at the bar.
That you can trust and you shouldn't trust, but it seems to me like there was a breakdown more broadly, and that is someone somewhere had enormous access, and
clearly someone somewhere.
And over a long period of time, and it seems like with just extraordinary ease, was able to have access to these documents and then walk out of the building with them. They didn't break down through computers and get electronic access. It looks like they had physical access things and actually were walking around with them. That is actually quite surprising to me.
Uh-huh.
So we're seeing now with China, some of the leaks are about China and us not being able to have war with them.
Yes. Not being able to have war with them. This is some of these leaks about us. Some people have a way with words. Other people not have way, I guess. No have war with them? What the fuck?
Us not being able to.
Hold on.
With China, some of the leaks are about China and us not being able to have war with them.
I think he means make whoopee, but not being able to have war? Fucking hell. I make war a long time. Simmer down.
The Taiwan thing, where
the not being able to have war with them. The Taiwan thing. What's the thing with the Taiwan? But is that a thing?
We headed on that?
Where are we headed on that?
Is China? I mean, if I were China,
if you were China, you would probably be in the exact same shape you are in now, Glenn.
This president and this Pentagon, man, I would, if it looks like somebody else is going to win the White House, man, I would make my moves right now on Taiwan.
What? You mean Trump? You can't say that we're fucking ratcheting up for a war with China and, oh my God, we're on the cusp of this fucking war. It's coming, and we're going to have to deal with this, and they're going to invade Taiwan. And Biden said repeatedly that we're going to back them if they do, and the European Union isn't necessarily going to send ships that they don't have to an area they don't cover that we're handling. That's not important. The important thing is that Trump wouldn't give a fuck.
Well,
can they?
Yeah. Yeah, well, they're close to that. They're not quite where they want to be militarily, but military isn't the only consideration that they have.
No, I would have thought that they were already that Biden was kicking. They were kicking Biden's ass and they owned him. So what? I mean, do we have to even worry about their military capability? Can't they just stroll right in? What did they pay for if? What'd they give all that money to Biden for if they can't just stroll right in and take Taiwan? What the living shit? Why in the world would they wait till Trump gets back in office if they could have a preference to take Taiwan? I don't.
One of the primary considerations, of course, is what you just indicated. What do they estimate the United States will do? What do they estimate the response of the leadership and the president of the United States would be?
And obviously, Biden is not going to defend Taiwan. He's just going to let him have it, because his son walked out of there with $1 billion, a huge diamond, and a couple of prostitutes and some crack.
And it's very, very clear. And everyone talks about Afghanistan, but you really
wait a minute. What's very, very clear?
Just can't overemphasize the importance of that, Glenn. I mean, as I've traveled around the world since then, I hear it all the time. And not just from our friends, but from our adversaries as well. I mean,
why are you talking to our adversaries and about what?
They look at that and they just go think what fickle, naive, weak leadership that was. And by the way,
you mean to plan the exit like Trump did or execute it like Biden did?
It's not just President Biden. It's General Milley. It's General Austin.
Oh, I know.
They're the ones who presided over that.
I know.
No, they didn't. As a matter of fact, they tried to talk him out of it. Just like everybody else did with Trump and with Obama. They tried to keep it we just need 18 more months, and we'll get this whole fucking locked. Don't even worry about it. Well, in your third year, we'll fucking get out. Let us give it a little more, and then no. And Biden went, no, buck stops with me. Fuck it, we're out. It's far too long. This makes no sense. We're throwing good money after bad for fucking decades, and it's not going to create a country.
So there's no question that President Xi looks at that and goes, well, maybe now is the time. And if I could share one.
Based on what? Based on the fact that we we're no longer spending that money in Afghanistan, those billions of dollars a week, where do you think that money goes?
One personal experience I had, I was on another interview, and they asked me, well, what's the timeline? I said, well, it's hard to say. The analysts, of course, predicting the future, but I said, I think it's probably 4 to 6 years. And that weekend, I was called by a former.
By the way, I think the invasion of Taiwan is what he's talking about. But the way Glenn Beck, that the Chinese within 4 to 6 years will attack Taiwan. That was the interview. That's what he's discussing. The way Glenn Beck put it, though, is he believes America might be 4 to 6 years away from war with China.
The former national security advisor, Robert.
And there is a distinction between the two.
A friend of mine. Then he said, no, Chris, I think it's probably closer to 2 years. And then
why would they wait until the end of Biden's term? If he's on the hook, how does this make any fucking sense? I don't get it. Why? All right. For all those people like Beijing Biden, they got him by the short and curlies. Well, why aren't they tugging then?
An hour later, I got a phone call from another very, very senior military officer who called me.
He said, they're attacking right now. It happened 2 years ago. When is this?
I said, Chris, I think you're wrong. I think it's closer to 2 years. Having been in the region recently, this much is very, very clear. China is preparing for war against the United States in over Taiwan in the South China Sea. They're preparing urgently, and I don't think the timeline is a decade for sure. It's probably not 5 years. It probably is sometime between now and the next election.
Well, that's because they're counting on the idea that during the election, perhaps, and that's the thinking on the military people he was talking to, and I don't think it is. But they're thinking that we will be so wrapped up in a contentious and vile campaigning season because Trump will be running again, and it will be full of incendiary shit, and then they will do it, and Trump can blame Biden for showing weakness and yada yada, and dragging us into a war with China, and da, 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 and I could shut it down in a couple of weeks, and so they feel like they could use that to help Trump get back into office and broom Biden and reverse the CHIPS Act and shit like that. That's the thinking of a bunch of these folks.
What does that mean for us, Chris?
Why don't you tell us? What does it mean for us? What does it mean that China decides that Taiwan, which is part of their country already, must be bombed into basically just 5 huts and a couple of tea fields?
Yes. What does a world with the United States at war with China and most likely with Russia, what does that look like?
Why don't you tell us, Glenn? I mean, you've read the Bible.
Yeah, and that really is a key question. What does that mean to us? I was in Ukraine last week and left there. Well, it was an interesting trip. I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us about it,
Glenn? But one of the impressions I left there with was, to those of us here in the United States who we've sent them, as you and I have talked about, perhaps more than $100 billion. But most Americans, they may say, okay, well, we want to support that. It's a lot of money. But as far as it affects how we live day to day, it does not. I mean, we're completely unaware of it. Now, President Biden will blame the price of fuel on the war in Ukraine, but that's nonsense. That's not the reason for that. It's because of his own policies. But
no, it's because of last year. It absolutely was. It's just not affecting it anymore.
When and if there.
Also, tell me about the Willow Project. No, you're not going to tell me about that, Utah?
There's a war in over Taiwan. Every single one of us will feel it every single day, and I'll give you one illustration.
Have you seen the price of rice lately?
This analysis has said we would have a 9% reduction in our GDP the first year from the inability to access the chips and especially the exquisite chips. 9%.
The exquisite chips? I'm sorry. In this economic document you were looking at, they used the word exquisite? Really? They didn't use magical? They didn't use nacho cheese flavored? What the fuck? Exquisite? Get the fuck out of here. We wouldn't have access to the exquisite chips. Okay, what he means is, by the way, he's not talking about chips from fucking China. He's talking about chips from Taiwan. That's what he means. Yes, and I got news for you. That's true whenever China attacks Taiwan. If we lose, if any access to chips that we would lose are not because we're at war with China. We would lose them because China has decided, apropos of fucking nothing, because they feel like it, to kill a bunch of people in Taiwan and bomb the living shit out of the island. And, by the way, those chips, those exquisite chips, are printed by TSMC, but they are designed in Silicon Valley. They are designed in the United States. These are not Taiwanese designs of chips. These are not Chinese designs. They are designed here. They are fabricated there. And so, this asshole, hold on one second. Hold on one second. Okay, 1 second. Oh, get out of here. Oops, sorry. That's you guys. 1 second. Here you go. TSMC. The investment by TSMC is one of the largest foreign investments in U.S. history and the largest in the state of Arizona. Now you know why Carrie Lake wants to be governor, so she can shut it down. Semiconductor chips are used in everything from computers and smartphones to cars, microwaves, healthcare devices. Once the plants open, they will produce enough chips to meet the U.S. annual demand. That factory alone. This dude is, I mean, it should be no surprise to anybody, but it is operating on ancient fucking intel.
The Great Depression.
Why the fuck do you think the Biden administration pushed the CHIPS Act? Why do you think we're doing this? Because in the case that China does attack Taiwan, we won't lose that manufacturing. And it's already up and running. It is already functioning now. They're not at full capacity yet, but they sure as shit will be in the next year or so before China attacks Taiwan. And then what? Is it strategically more important for Taiwan to have their main functioning chip factory in the United States instead of on their own land so that they can do the administrative aspects of chip manufacturing over there without actually, worrying about their factory being bombed because Xi Jinping doesn't want anybody to know that his 3 red lines policy was ass.
Reduction in GDP the first year was 7.5%.
Oh my gosh.
If we don't have access to those exquisite, sexy, voluptuous, saucy little chips. Shut the fuck up. All right, I'm over that too. All right, I'm running out of I'm already overtime. But Christ almighty, the lazy, intellectual incompetence of this shit. And I'm going to bring the chat back in because I love you guys. 1 second. Here we go. Hi, Magoo. Is it possible? Is it at all possible? One more, please. I got to get some rest because I got to stay on schedule because I burned myself out yesterday. But lots of show tomorrow, trust me, and lots more tomorrow night. I agree, Captain America rocks. So there is an ongoing issue with zombie talking points on the right. And this is one of them. This is the like this idea that China's going to eat our lunch idea is so fucking tired, and is at this point its only value is CCP propaganda, because it's nowhere near true. And the Chinese know that without any help from the United States at all, with none, I mean material, we've got people training there, we've sold them stuff, but without us, without our ships or our soldiers firing a fucking bullet, or a missile, that there would be 1 million Chinese soldiers, and I don't mean the Taiwanese, I mean Chinese mainland soldiers dead in a fucking day. And they know this. Everyone in China who discusses this with any fucking sense at all, and there's a good portion of them, even in the CCP, knows this. 1 million. Because unlike Russia to Ukraine, which is land, and they already claim half of it, Taiwan will have to seize beaches and land in highly populated areas, and they are going to have to strafe bomb places, and the return fire from Taiwan will be over fucking whelming. It'll have to be. And they're just going to burn through 1 million parenting age men in like 9 hours. It's idiotic. If China can't do reunification with Taiwan through political means, it can't do it at all. If it tries to do it by force, it nullifies the purpose of having Taiwan in the first place. It's insane. And it's not just me who thinks this. It's not just, stateside people who, care about this issue or love Taiwan or any of that stuff. The Chinese know it. The CCP knows it. The Chinese military guys know it. Because they're going to have to kill a bunch of civilians, and the Taiwanese have been planning to deal with this for a long fucking time, and they're not going to just sit there while China roars overhead and bombs civilians in cities. It's not going to fucking happen. The island's not that fucking big. The anti-aircraft stuff to attack the Chinese boats, airplanes and missiles coming in, and then long-range weaponry that would fire at the ships and boats coming in with people on them, are on the opposite side of the fucking island. They can't circle it and cut it off because we have subs in the area letting the Taiwanese know all the fucking time. That's why when they do this shit, they always traverse the upper corner of the atmosphere, of their territorial barrier. They just it's like they're just tagging on it. It's impotent madness. And by the time they do it, we have the lesson learned about Afghanistan and Russia's invasion of Ukraine more than anything else was a lesson learned by the United States government and the people of the United States, which is if we rely on the world market for oil, then any country can just start manipulating the price and fuck with our politics and fuck with our country anytime they want to. The same way Osama bin Laden did, the same way dragging us into wars in the Middle East did. And we have no interest in that anymore. We used to say it all the time, no blood for oil. And we have, the minute we stop buying oil from violent people that use it to buy weapons to kill innocent people, we're out of that. We free ourselves of the karma and the need for it, the better. And then it drifted off a little bit, and Russia resurged that whole thing and made us and the Europeans really aware of it. And our movement, because of climate change and all that kind of stuff, has moved us in a direction where renewables will make the difference. We produce 17.3 million barrels of gas a day. Of oil a day in the United States. We need 20. If we lower that amount, we can either raise it up to 20, which we're probably going to do. We're probably going to be at 21 by the end of the year. We could do that, and we can lower our consumption through electric cars and renewables and other shit like that. We'll shave off that extra excess so that if we have to cut back, it doesn't affect our life at all. And we don't have to rely on that market outside the country anymore. Same thing, and we learned that lesson. And we're moving in that direction. So it's going to take a while because these kind of lessons, these kind of changes are expensive and time-consuming and require a lot of engineering and difficult tasks, building of factories and and refineries and the like. Same thing is true with chips. We know that TSMC makes a big portion of the the chips that we need for really high-level stuff. So we built one of their factories here already, and we're expanding it. They're investing, we're investing. It's a team effort. And we've got 9 others being built right now, so that no longer will the chips be made anywhere else. There is no reason materially in terms of labor costs or any of that shit like you do with, widgets and plastic goods and fucking toothbrushes and whatever the shit is made in factories all over the world. There's no reason to do chips that way. Everybody gets it. It's an expensive job no matter where you do it. And it's worth the expense to make sure that nobody can cut it off. So we're moving it to the United States. That's it. And the United States will be the primary supplier of those chips for the industrialized world going forward, which is smart from an industrial standpoint. It's smart from a national security standpoint, and it's safer. And that it's the same fucking lesson. And these dickheads still think it's 2008. And I don't get it. Tobias, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. And Persona, bless you as well. Kairis, DC22257. Thank you, Norman, for the gifted subs. Appreciate you guys a lot. Oh, yeah. I'll see you tomorrow for the morning show. And I'm still trying to get a guest. We'll see. And then, but if not, it's just you and I. It's just the two of us. We can make it if we try. And then I'll, yeah. Oh, and another thing.